This podcast is a 98 Studios production.
Today's the day, baby.
Today's the day.
Today's the day.
Today's the motherfucking day.
Today is the day.
Today's the day.
Today is the day.
Today's the day.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to Today's the Day with Zack Anderson. Today, I'm especially excited for. We have one of my new best friends, coworkers, mentors, leaders, Mr. Leo Sagebin. I'm super excited to chat. I've been trying to lock you down for the last couple months. We just started working together a couple months ago, and it's been a blast, and I'm incredibly impressed. But I haven't heard your story in depth yet, so I'm actually really excited to kind of dive into it. And then I've got a whole slew of questions I want to ask you. But Leo, dude, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I know you're busy.
Thank you for having me, dude. Honored, humbled, grateful.
You're busy right now, too.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Crazy is good, though.
You drove all the way down here. You brought your son.
Brought my son.
Middle
right
of the
there.
day.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you big time. Thank you. Let's dive in. Let's help everybody get to know you a little bit. So sitting right now, you're the VP of Fusion at Sunrun. So you're my boss, and you run the ship pretty much over there, which is really, really cool to watch. Rewinding way back, though, I want to hear the origin story, the come up, struggled all the way through, and then I got questions for you. So tell us who Leo is. Give us the rundown, fill us in, help us understand you a little bit.
Cool. So honestly, humbled, honored, grateful to be here. My story is pretty wild. Born in São Paulo, Brazil, came to the United States when I was super young. I share this story a lot because it's who I am. I attribute a lot of my successes because of this, but came to the United States at a young age. It was my mom, my dad, my older sister, my older brother, me, and then a younger sister, two older brothers, a sister, and me. Came to the United States and watched my parents kind of struggle through everything like you would expect a typical immigrant family to deal with. So we went from like small house to small house. My dad had like big goals and aspirations coming to this, the great America. Had a few businesses fail and stuff. And so I kind of saw my family go through this whole process, which I'm eternally grateful for now, sitting back, like looking at it, because I think that's what's really sculpted me and my brothers. But yeah, dude, like it was your typical immigrant upbringing. Like my mom and dad, I remember at like a young age, it was wild. My mom and dad would wake me up, me and my brothers up. The newspapers would be delivered to our house. Me and my brothers would fold the newspapers, put them in a bag. And then my dad, my mom, my older brother, my grandpa would get all of the newspaper, put it in the back of the car, and then they'd go deliver newspapers. And then when I became old enough, before school, like in elementary school, I would, at a certain age, my dad's like, okay, now you can come deliver newspapers. We'd wake up at 5 a.m. and then we'd drive, and then me and my brothers would go grab newspapers and go and deliver it. And I remember probably one of the first lessons I ever learned from my dad was to do things right the first time. Because I remember we'd get the newspaper and like chuck it. And if it wasn't like perfectly put on the property, whatever, my dad would stop the car. He's like, no, go back, get the newspaper, put it in the right place. Me and my brothers we're so tired and young.
Do it right the first time.
Yeah, my dad just taught us that lesson of doing it the right time the first time. So we did that. We were living in Salt Lake City, Utah, in Sugar House. And my mom and dad, they had started a company, not to get like overly over the top on this, but they had started a company. It didn't work out. We had to move from Sugar House to like a basement apartment. Mm-hmm. And I remember like I was kind of young. That didn't really mean a lot to me. But to my brothers that were in like high school and junior high, it was like a huge shock to their ego moving into like this basement house.
How old were you at that point?
I was probably like in junior high.
Cool.
And then my dad had started a construction company that was doing really well and then didn't do well, filed bankruptcy again 2 times. And that second time it like really affected me because I was like approaching high school. And we went from like the house that we had built to moving to like another house. And it's kind of wild. Like my dad kind of, and I've shared this before and he's like giving me permission to share this, but my dad kind of went into like this downward spiral of depression. He's like, I have a degree. I came to this country. I've had 2 companies fail. My mom started working at United Airlines. I don't even think my son's heard this story. My mom started working at United Airlines a ton, traveling a ton to like put food on the table. And my dad just kind of went into like this crazy spiral of depression. My brothers were on missions. I was like the one at home with my parents and my family trying to kind of hold it together. And I just remember my dad just having this like numb look in his face of just complete failure. And it was really, really heavy for me. Me and my sister, my younger sister, got really close during that time. And it was just wild, man.
How long did that last?
It was probably a good 2 years that my dad was in this like pretty crazy funk.
Mhm.
Ironically enough, the story ends good, right? And this is crazy. So a guy in my dad's home ward eventually approached my dad and said, "Hey, Fabio, I know you're not like working." He was trying to get job, like he was trying to get it, he just couldn't find a good job.
Yep.
He approached my dad and said, "Hey, I know this is wild beneath you, but I need somebody to go deliver chocolates to like people that have bought chocolates. I need like a delivery guy." And my dad was like, "All right, cool. Like I'll go do it."
Yeah.
And my dad started doing that. If you ever met my dad, he's like the kindest, like funniest human being on earth, which was kind of wild that he like went through that
Yeah.
dilemma there. But my dad would go and deliver these Kavanaugh chocolates, and he was probably doing it for a few months to a year. I don't know. I felt I was pretty young. And one of those customers eventually approached my dad and he's like, "Hey, don't you speak fluent Spanish, English, and Portuguese?" My dad's like, "Yeah." Like they started chatting. And he's like, "There's a company looking for like a translator from English to Portuguese. What are your thoughts?" My dad's like, "I'll take anything at this point."
Yeah.
And my dad started working there and then kind of worked up the corporate ladder and ended up overseeing that like whole department. And it's cool seeing my dad's perspective because he went from like mass depression to overly qualified delivering chocolates to taking a chance, going and doing something, and then running this whole department. And
That's
he's
so
extremely
cool.
humbled. And that was something that like kind of got him out of that. And but again, like I often talk about my past because I'm proud of it in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things I'm not super good at. One of the things I've been blessed with is a huge amount of compassion to people.
Mm.
And I think and believe, like, how do you teach compassion to somebody? Like, I don't know. But I do think, like, I do have compassion. I view people from, like, a different angle because of my past, because of how I grew up. I just want people to succeed. I want people to have success, and it's been cool.
That's way cool. So in that period when your dad's in that like funk, what are you like through up into high school and then through high school as well? You mentioned you got close with your sister during that period. What were you like? What was your life like from your point of view?
So I was working hard. Like I could never afford clothes or like a cell phone or anything. So at a young age, I had to work. I remember one of the first jobs I had, I would ride my bike to Domino's Pizza and would work at Domino's Pizza. And I remember like my son's laughing right now because I actually took my son. I was like, "This is where dad started at Domino's." But I remember riding my bike. I was probably 15. And the first time I'd ever gotten like a boss being like, "Hey, you're doing a great job," was at the first time I ever experienced that like approval from like a work perspective was my Domino's Pizza manager. And it was during Super Bowl Sunday and pizzas were just flying off the shelves, right? It was crazy. It was crazy at Domino's.
And you were whipping that shit up back there.
So I was answering phone calls and we were getting backed up. And I'm like, "You want to know what? You start answering the phone calls. I'm going to go make pizzas." And I just took initiative. And I was like, "I will slap these pizzas quicker than all of you." And I was like 15, moved the guys down and just started. And my boss guy was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "We're backed up. I made the call. Like, just deal with it. Trust me." And he was like, "Okay." And like walked off and we like got caught up in these orders. And I was leaving on my bike and the boss guy comes out and he's like, Leo, like runs me down. He's like, "I just want to say, I am so proud of you. You took initiative. You didn't need to ask anything." And it just made me feel so good of that
That's
little
awesome.
experience. So while my dad was kind of going through this thing, my lifesaver was work and then sports. I'm a big soccer guy. Grew up playing soccer my whole life and was working a lot. I had girlfriends. I was like a typical teenager. And
Yeah.
I remember sitting down and like I could see there was friction between my mom and my dad. And I know that like broke my heart. And I'd often try to sit down with my dad and try to like
Fix it.
do
Yeah.
the best that I could. My relationship with my dad to this day, like he's my hero. I've talked about him on other podcasts. He's my hero. To me, a hero is someone that never gives up, that prevails over like the odds.
Mhm.
And my dad to this day is my hero. And I hope I live my life like that to my son, that one day he'll be able to be on a podcast and say his dad's a hero, you know?
I love that. I love that. So then getting through high school, you had your work. What other jobs did you hold through high school? And then soccer, like was soccer like a massive part of your life? Like I only know your son's situation because you always talk about it. Like that's a massive part of his life, I assume, and he's taking over. Or was it more of like, oh, I was just in soccer because that's what I liked? And
it was my escape. My escape was work, and my escape was sports, and my escape was friends, right? So a lot of my life was, I was always kind of like a hustler. I remember that from a young age. I was like, hey, we can go like spray on people's addresses, and we can collect money. We can go shovel this. And I just remember at a young age, I was always a hustler. I was always thinking of ways to make money because I had no other way of paying for prom or paying for a date or paying for food because my parents couldn't provide that. And so I had to learn at like a young age to go and do that. And I learned quickly that you can go get things that you want if you work hard, if you can communicate well. And I just remember my little brain starting to like piece these things together. And then soccer to me, again, I was, played, high level soccer. And so that took a huge part of my life as well. So,
For sure. So then getting through high school, you get through high school, your LDS, your brother served missions, you served a mission as well, a 2-year mission.
Yeah.
There you go. Where did you serve? How was that?
Bro, of all places, I'm like, I speak English, Spanish, and Portuguese. I'm like, God, just send me somewhere warm. I swear to you. I was like, send me somewhere warm. I got called to Minnesota, bro.
No.
The coldest place on planet Earth. People don't even realize when I say cold, it was like the coldest place on earth. But it was great, dude. There on my
Did you have second thoughts when you got your mission
bro,
call?
I remember opening
you're
my
like,
mission
I'm
call.
not doing it.
My friends, my girlfriends, all of them. It was like the most anticlimactic. Like my buddies are going to Africa and like all these wild places. And I'm like, Leo, you're now called to Minnesota. I was like, where's Minnesota? It was wild. But there I learned how to, because my whole mission, it was like knocking doors. It's like the Bible Belt. You just all day long knocking doors. And then I met a guy on my mission, one of my last areas, a guy by the name of Chris Lee, stud, great guy, was in solar, sold his company for a ton of money. I hope he hears this. I am eternally grateful for him, but I met him in one of my last areas. And he approached me and he was like, hey, dude, like you're sharp, kind of gave me the whole pitch. I'm a missionary. I show up to church one Sunday and there's like 800 young men in my ward all of a sudden. And I'm like, what in the manna from heaven just happened here? And that was the first time I was introduced to door-to-door sales. The bishop in that ward was like, oh, these are all sales guys. They come here to sell smart home and pest control. And I was like, that's weird. One of those guys and I became really good friends. And he's the one that ultimately introduced me to door-to-door.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. How
on your mission.
It's crazy.
And you were paying to be there and they were getting paid.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so gangster. Missions are awesome. What do you feel like? So everyone that I've had a lot of guests on here who have served missions. So everyone who listens already knows what a 2-year mission entails. And if you don't, you can figure it out pretty easily. I feel like that is one of the best. I didn't serve a mission, but I'm like more supportive than you'd think for missions because I feel like it's one of the best rite of passages into like adulthood you can have. And I'm curious if you felt like that was like true for you, what you learned from it. How does it like, I'm only an outsider. I've never done it, but I'm like, damn, I see what guys go and learn. And even my really, really close friends, they come back like a totally different person. And like spirituality aside, which I'm sure, and you're more than welcome to go and talk about that side of it as well, the religious side of it, because I'm sure there's incredible benefits there, just like worldly benefits. It's like a rite of passage into adulthood. Totally. And I was reading a book that talks about how in the olden days, like back in like caveman time or Viking time or whatever, I can't even remember specifically which one it was, like the 18-year-old mark, how legally you become an adult, like that is kind of all that exists in the current world. Like you just become 18 and now you can get in trouble and go to prison, but there's not really a rite of passage into adulthood. And in the book, it says there's a massive correlation between a rite of passage and living a successful life out the gates rather than spending the first 10 years of adulthood just falling on your face, getting your ass kicked. Do you think that theory is like true?
Totally.
And what are your thoughts on it? I'm curious.
So I couldn't agree with that statement more. I think I'm a big believer in like reflecting in life and like pausing and like listening to like what's going on in my mind. And I've often done that and thought, how did this poor immigrant Domino's pizza working individual, get to where he's at right now, right? Self-reflecting, I think, is super important. And every single time I go down like this, like wormhole, the most critical thing was my mission. On my mission, I went as a boy, I came back as a man. I learned infinite lessons on responsibility, hard work, how to deal with problems, how to deal with a companion that you might not get along with, how to communicate, how to set goals, how to accomplish goals. All of the things that I do to this day as like a VP of a large sales program is from the habits that I learned as a missionary,
1,000%.
spiritual things aside.
Yep.
And I would also say I take a tremendous amount of pride in Fusion and my business accolades, but I take even more pride in I'm a happy married man. Like, I love my wife. I love my kids. You've met Micah. Micah was at the Create party. Micah, for you guys that can't see me, sitting right there.
Yep.
My greatest accomplishment is my relationship with my wife and my kids. And there's a lot of successful people out there that can't say the same thing. And I learned important lessons of navigating relationships, talking through problems on my mission. And so not just did that help me financially, but it helped me in the most important thing in my life, which is my family, being a good husband and a good dad. And so I'm grateful for it.
That's so awesome. I love that. And it's weird because that book stood out to me a lot because I meet a lot of guys, or I meet people in their mid-20s or whatever, where it's like they're just like a bum. And like there's no way around that other than they are. And you got to realize you are if you are, and that's not in a rude way or derogatory way or anything like that. It's just like you got to realize it. And like, I think, so I have a question for you. People who didn't serve a mission, or they're not religious, or they don't plan to serve a mission, or whatever it may be, like, what are substitutes for that rite of passage into adulthood where you can go somewhere a boy and come out a man, other than just like fumbling through your early adulthood? Like, what would you say? And I have my own opinions, but I'm curious on yours.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in going out and doing summer sales. I think there's a lot that you learn. I think there's a lot of wisdom in leaving home and leaving your friends and going to like a different state and doing something different.
Yep.
I think I'm a huge believer in that. My nephew's getting married right now, and he asked me this advice. I was like, bro, you and your wife just go move to a state, go do sales, go do something, because you learn a lot about yourself. You appreciate your family and your friends more. You become more mature when you get away from like your nest egg,
100%.
your nest. And I'm just a believer in that. And I've seen most people that like have left home, especially during those critical years, 18, 19, like those years, to really go and mature, learn and grow and like allow yourself to evolve into an adult. I think is important. So when I look back, I'm like, going and doing summer sales is great. Going away to college, as long as you've got like your mind straight, is great. Going and doing an internship away from home is great. Those are all things that, again, give you the same type of experience that a mission does. That's not a mission. What are you looking for? You're looking to be independent. You're looking to manage your own schedule. You're looking to grow up, go grocery shopping, do your laundry, like do these simple things. You're making new friends, so you're having to communicate, and you're appreciating the very important things that were back home. And I think
1,000%.
all of those things encompass a good individual. And you need that perspective.
100%
to flourish.
I think I agree 1,000%. I think leaving, that's exactly what I'd say. And there's a million things, and obviously there's different opinions. And I think there are some that are better than others. Like some are more effective. I think a mission is top 2.
Yeah, agree.
1,000%.
Military, like
I think exactly,
military,
dude. I think there are a lot, but I think for me at least, that was a massive thing. When I left home, I always talked about in high school, junior. I'm like, I can't wait to move out of Utah. Like Utah's this bubble, like. It's like cool to talk about like leaving Utah because Utah's not cool. And then I left Utah. I was like, holy shit. I was like, get me home. Like I miss Sunday dinners. I miss the family. I miss
so true.
It's so crazy. And it's like now when I leave, it's exciting to go other places. I move 5 months out every year usually. It's like exciting, but it's like, this is home. It's like home base, which is really, really cool. And I love that. Okay. Sorry. Little rabbit hole. I wanted your opinion on that. So you get back from your mission, right? You grew up a little bit, you learned a lot. What's life like from there?
One thing I want to just touch up again on my mission, and then I'll jump back into that. But I remember in the mission, you start off, it's kind of like door-to-door sales. You start off as like a door knocker, and then you evolve to a close. There's like an evolution in the mission for those that don't know. I I remember at one point as well, this again was like my evolution of my brain and business and like solving problems. Started off super young at like Domino's, evolved into like my mission. But I remember as being what's called a zone leader, where it's kind of like a district manager or regional manager in door to door.
It means you're in charge of other people.
You're in charge of multiple groups of people.
Yep.
And I remember like looking at data of the mission, and it was like, hey, X amount of our success is coming from this. It kind of has like a pie chart.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to my mission president who kind of ran the show there. And I said, mission president, I was like, just for us to like digest a little bit here. I've noticed that the majority of our effort, if we look at our time spent as missionaries out searching for potential investigators, we're spending the most amount of time in what's reaping the least reward, which was door to door. So the vast majority of our success was coming from part member families and different stuff. Having said that, we spent the most amount of our time doing this. And I remember like pitching for the first time being like, I think we need to switch this and this and this and this. And then that was like the first time I was like kind of pitching an idea and a philosophy on like what we need to go do.
Mm-hmm.
And my mission president, like, that was interesting. And we shifted a few things and our conversions went up significantly because we just pivoted data-driven decisions. We pivoted our model to focus on what we had more success in, which sounds like an obvious thing, but that wasn't the culture of the mission. And we pivoted and started to see like a lot of success. And so I started to like, and I didn't realize this till years later, I started to just notice my little entrepreneurial mind like flourish, and my ability and my confidence kind of flourish as being like,
right.
I can go solve problems. I was right. I can articulate certain things, and I can get buy-in from people to go and do this because of my track record. And I think you have to have a track record for people to take you serious. If I was just some lazy guy that wasn't doing anything, and then I go with this grand idea to go pivot culture, people would be like, yo, dude, you got no skin in the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't be taken serious. So
100%.
I think you have to have success. You have to have something to like bet on. But then I saw that kind of evolving. And I thought that was super cool. So after my mission, this is like where things get crazy. I come back. My mind has been opened. I'm a man. I'm mature. My family life has gotten stable. Everything like was just on a stable foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I started dating my high school sweetheart, Jamie, who's an entrepreneur as well. I'll talk about her later, but her and I started dating again, which was wild. Everything that I gave up to go on my mission, I made some promises. I said, just protect the things that are most important for me. I will work my guts off. Give me the opportunity to go back. And everything happened that way. I came back. My family life was good. Things were good. Things were stable. I went and reached out to my wife, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
We started dating again. And then I felt this like overwhelming pressure of like, okay, cool. Like, now you got to go provide.
Yep.
And my wife grew up super wealthy. I grew up super poor. Having said that, I never felt the pressure from her or her family. One of my greatest qualities of my wife, Jamie, is she's like a ride or die. If I lived in a trailer home with nothing, she'd be by my side and she'd be loving life. Like, that's her greatest quality. So I started to kind of feel this pressure, like, what am I going to do? And I started to get approached by like all the bros. Oh, dude, you're sharp. Look at my watch. Look at my car. And I was like, I'm done doing door to door. I knocked my whole mission. I'm done with it. You know the game. And finally, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should go take a look at this door to door thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the pitch back then was one a day is 50K. So, hey, if you go and knock and you sell one account every single day, you'll make $50,000. Keep in mind, this was in 2008 when the economy was just garbage. The whole economy had like crumbled.
So 50 grand is life-saving
It's
money.
life-saving. And I remember talking to my fiance at the time, Jamie. I'm like, hey, if I do half of that, if I make $10,000, that's a good like, foundation for us to go build a life on. I can go to college. That's how like small my mind was, right? And Jamie being like as supportive as possible, she's like, I think you'd kill it. You do great. So this Chris Lee guy that I met on my mission, I was like, I don't want to go work for like the Vivint Bros or the Apex Bros at the time or Pinnacle Bros. I'm going to go trust this guy who worked for a small company called Security One. And he pitched me and they like tried to give me like an Xbox as like a signing bonus, bro. It's evolved, dude. It's evolved.
I think that's gang.
It's
I think that
gangster,
would
dude.
work very well still to this day.
And I was just like, no, I got to go figure out something for me and the future of my family. And we went out. So he kind of pitched me. I was like, cool, I want to go try this thing out. On the car ride, so it's me, him, and like two other guys. We're driving to Taylorsville, Utah. where it's crime ridden, like
Fire, knocking area.
dude, just Taylorsville, Utah. And he's like giving me the pitch. This is the contract. This is the yard sign. Like, cool. Like they're giving me the pitch, elevator pitch as we're driving to Taylorsville, Utah. We get out of the car and he's going to go knock with me. And I'm like, no, dude, like, let me go knock on my own. Because I didn't want to I didn't want him
to see you
to
suck.
see me fail.
Yep.
And I was like, no, just let me go stumble on my own. And he's like, all right, that's weird. And he went one direction, I went another direction. Bro, my 4th or 5th home in, I meet this lady. She's terrified of burglaries. Like, it was just the perfect situation. I sold her a deal, walked back. The car group was waiting for me. And the guys in the car was like, did you just sell a deal? And I was like, I just sold a deal. And they're blown away. And Zack, I cannot explain to you the feeling driving back. My brain couldn't comprehend that I just made $200 in an hour and a half. And that was the end of it. I was like, I will never do anything again. I have such an addictive personality that I was like, I will never do anything again. I remember being in the shower, like pitching. Me and my fiance, my wife now, but like my fiance, we'd be like sitting at dinner and I'd be like pitching her. We'd have date night to like go to a movie. And I'm like, hey, let's go early. I want to go pitch a house. And I'd go pitch it every single time I'd get into a home and close. And I ended that summer being the #1 rookie and the #1 sales guy for that smaller company, and made like $200,000+.
Unreal.
And it completely changed my life, dude. And I sit back again, I'm like self-reflecting again. I am so grateful, man. I'm just so great. My heart is just filled with the utmost gratitude for the people that bet on me, for the people that were like those like angels throughout my life that were placed in front of me to like help this complicated boy get to the path that he's in, man. I'm like, from time to time, I'll reach out to Claudio Hand and Chris Lee, these early stage guys that were influential in my life. And I'll just tear-felt just say, thank you. I could have been this. I could have done this. And I'm living the greatest life possible because you guys believed in me. You fought for me. You sold me on an opportunity. You delivered. And just super grateful.
So cool. That's awesome. That's flip 180 from my first year, but so I don't relate with that, but that's amazing. I know a lot of people do it. And it's like, that's so cool. I have questions regarding that. I want to get all the way through your story. And then I think these questions you'll have a lot more weight with your answer when the rest of your story is kind of unfolded because you've done some really cool things. So you go out your first summer, you dominate, especially in 2008. That was your first summer, 2008?
Yeah.
Holy crap. Go make $200,000. You were what, 21? And then moving forward from there, how did you get to where you're at?
So the path, and it's complicated. I'm going to write a book about it one day because it's wild. And my first summer, had a ton of success. Went out my second summer, went to North Dakota. That's when I started recruiting heavy. I was like, okay, I've got this. I figured it out. I recruited Jordan Briner, Brig Barron, all these guys that run Sunrun with me now, like these big names in Sunrun, mission buddies. I really started recruiting. We went out to North Dakota the following year, North Dakota/Montana, I think. Went out there, had a bunch of success. Ended the summer, recruited my brother. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon now. Right out of college, he was working with me as a technician. Awesome. And my other brother, who runs another company of mine, just got the whole gang together, went out there and sold, did well, came back. And Monotronics, the funder of contracts back then, essentially pulled all their business from Utah. So I get a call from the CEO of Security One. He's like, Leo, don't know what to say, but Monotronics just pulled their funding and they're not funding this Utah business. There's a huge shakeup that happened in Utah Valley. And he's like, I can't pay people's back ends. I don't have the capital. Their attrition's too high, whatever. And I was like, well, don't pay me mine. Pull mine aside, pay my guys. You and I will figure out something later. So he paid all my guys. I didn't get paid anything. I actually had to take some money from my account. I remember it was wild. Like I went to Wells Fargo, pulled out hundreds of thousands of dollars, went to their account, deposited it so he could go make payroll. But I trusted the man and he fulfilled on all of his promises. He paid everybody. And one night I'm like laying in bed. And there's a few of these like laying in bed moments I'll talk through. And I have this impression of, hey, you need to email the CEO and present an option of acquiring his infrastructure. And I was like, that's stupid. Went on an impression, emailed him, hit send, go to bed, wake up with a response. Say, hey, I'm flying you and a kid named Freddie Katota, who was another regional, to Los Angeles. We fly out to LA. We sit down, and this guy named Claudio, who I love and adore to this day, great man, sits down and said, hey, some things have shaken up. I'm going to exit the industry. but Leo, your email resonated. I want to sell you my infrastructure. We'll work out a multiple that you pay me. I'll connect you with all of my network, my people, my alarm distributor, all of those things. I'll teach you the business in and out, and then you'll acquire it through fundings that happen. And I was like, whoa, crazy, cool, did it. And I sat down and was like, lifted up the hood on how smart home works, multiples and this and that. And overnight, I started my own smart home company called Shield Protection, who was a safe home security dealer, and owned that for, I want to say, 5 years. Had a ton of success. A lot of the Sunrun OG people that work with us now came from that core group of Shield Protection people. So I went from a brand new sales rep to being the number one guy to a manager to owning a smart home company. Owned it for 5 or 6 years. In that 5 or 6 years, moved to Kansas City, Missouri. And this was another like inspiring moment. The guy that used to buy my contracts from me was a guy named Dave Roman, CEO of Safe Home Security. At one point, again, I'm like, dude, these people in my life that just I'm so grateful for. At one point, randomly, he had no business, Zaza, to talk to me about this.
Yeah.
One call, he's like, Leo, he's like, why are you selling me these contracts? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, that's what the business is. He's like, have you heard of in-housing contracts? And I'm like, what's in-housing a contract? And he's like, well, here's the thing, Leo. I buy these contracts off of you for a multiple. You pay for the equipment, you pay for the rep, you keep the difference. That's the model. He's like, if you keep it, if you pay for stuff yourself and keep it for a year or 2 years, I'll buy those off of you a year or 2 years later for a higher multiple. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. And he's like, it makes total sense because you're taking all the risk. If they're aging for 12 months or 24 months, that demonstrates that the contract is good, and I'll pay you a premium for that. And I was like, my mind just
That's
blew
wild.
up. Wild.
Yeah, that's wild.
So I started in-housing my own contracts.
But that means you're also, during that 1 to 2 year period, reaping all the rewards. You do have the risk, but you're also reaping all the rewards.
You're reaping all the rewards. You're collecting residual income, and you're building a clean book of business. And again, like, I sit back and I'm like, why did he tell me that? That was the first time I became like a millionaire. And I'll explain that in a second. My son's just like, what? Like, you're about to learn some stuff right now about dad, son. And so
he's about to fall asleep.
Yeah. So I was starting to in-house contracts, and then like this whole solar thing kind of started to like approach. Like, I was like, what? Solar out in the distance? I'm like, that's weird. Solar as a service. I don't know if I believe in it. I went out and met with another huge influence in my life, Doug Robinson, CEO of Legacy Power. Eternally grateful for him, love his family, super proud of him. One of the greatest men in my life is Doug Robinson. Yep. Sit down with him. He pitches me on solar. And I remember leaving that meeting with my wife, and I was like, I 1000% am going to do this. I had all my in-house contracts. I was living in Kansas City at the time. Talked to Dave Roman. I'm like, I'm going to sell you all of these, and I'm going to roll the dice, dude, and go do solar. It was like a distinct impression I had living in Kansas City. Like, woke up in the night, I was like, I have to do this. If I don't do this, I will regret this the rest of my life. Talked to Jamie, my wife. She's a gangster. I'm like, Jamie, I have this impression. We need to sell everything and go do solar. And without a second of hesitation, Jamie looks me in the eye and says, let's do it. I'll start looking at homes. Starts looking at homes. I sell all my contracts. That was the first time I had like received a payout. And then
so that was your first exit.
That was my first exit.
Sold off all the contracts, pivoted.
I had zero debt on them.
Planning to pivot all your people as well.
So I pivoted. So during that time, I said, hey, anybody that wants to go with me, you're more than welcome. Anybody that wants to stay back, I'm connecting you with Freddie Katota, the original guy from the alarms.
Yeah.
He's got a great thing going on with the company out in California. I've already teed that up for you. Do what's best for you and your family. And a big chunk went with me, and a big chunk went with him.
Cool.
So that was my first exit. I was probably 27, moved to South Carolina to get into solar, and it was wild.
That is so crazy. So then you get into solar. It's totally foreign to you. Most people listening know my situation. Literally just left an alarm company into a solar company.
Same thing.
In way over my head, right? Having a blast, figuring everything out as we go. So then from there, and what you did in solar, there's still more to the story. This is what I want everyone to understand listening. There's still more to the story. It's like, oh, what? I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't expect that to happen. And it's like, I think that's what's so fun and entertaining about it. So you moved to South Carolina. How'd that go?
Super rocky. So
I was literally just going to ask, and I didn't want to like speak into existence. Did you ever struggle?
bro, yes.
Like, did you ever get your ass whooped, or did you just go dominate all the way across the board?
Bro, my whole
We might
story,
need to take a minute and talk
bro,
about that
my
shit.
whole story was kicked down and down and down again. And I'll get into some of that stuff.
Yes, sir.
This is where things get really turbulent. Because I think there's beauty in being naive.
Mm-hmm.
There's innocence in being naive, right?
Yep.
Everything up to this point, I was just naive. I was like, I just trusted. I was like, cool, like work, sell, make money, provide for your family. It was very like level one in like this like mecca of like being an entrepreneur and a business person. I definitely have like an evolution. Early stages, I was just super naive to all these moving pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But I had really important people in my life that taught me good lessons. And because of that, it was awesome. Once I got into solar is when like I think I evolved as like a leader and as like a human in this space. And again, hats off to the people at Legacy, which have been massively influential to me, Luke Toon as well. Like there's so many people to name there, but moved to South Carolina, brought all my people. Sunrun wasn't ready. Legacy was a dealer of Sunrun. They weren't ready with a product called the PPA out there. So we could only sell a loan that was like massively overpriced. For example, in South Carolina, to sell a loan with the rates back then, you'd have to sell a house that's worth $80,000, a whole house. They used a ton of power. So to put solar on it, you need to get a loan for like $80,000.
Oh,
it was just
gosh.
like, it didn't make sense for customers.
Yeah.
But we just kept grinding. I lost everybody minus my little brother.
Mm.
Minus my little brother. And I have like tons of like, it's funny, I've got tons of pictures and like texts that I'd send myself that like everything will be fine. Keep muscling through, be persistent, like things will be fine. We just kept working, lost everybody. Finally, a PPA was introduced to the state.
Mm.
And a year later, I had 100 reps and we were installing a megawatt a week and became the largest region in all of Legacy. We had hundreds and hundreds of reps from in all of South Carolina and just completely crushed it. It was unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So then how did your journey go from Legacy to Sunrun?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, let's hear that part.
And also there, like when I was a VP, so I got promoted to be the vice president of sales at Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
In that, I became really good friends with like the Vivint guys.
Mm-hmm.
So Adam McClellan, Daryl Doucette. I became really good friends with Christian Calabuso and James Allred, who were VPs at Trinity. Because I was always like a collaborator. I never wanted beef. I never like played dirty like that. I know I'm not the smartest man in the room. I want to rub shoulders with people that are going to teach me and I can learn from. And
Mm-hmm.
I was always humble in that sense. Like I genuinely believed in having friends in this space. So I got invited to go speak at Door to Door Con. I went and spoke there. Christian Calabuso, who was like my equal rival at Trinity, this huge solar company. First time him and I met, gave each other a big hug, went to dinner that day, and we like created a really strong bond, Christian and I.
Yeah.
And then Adam McClellan and Daryl Doucette. At one point, Daryl Doucette was trying to like gut all of my Legacy guys in Illinois, which is like a funny story. We were at like Bed Bath & Beyond. We were at some weird like place randomly. And Daryl and I became really good friends, even though we were competing. And some crazy things happened where, so I was a VP over all of everything east of the Mississippi River. Okay. And Illinois was launching, and I knew Illinois was going to be a huge market. Roofs were great. SREX were good, or the rebates were really good. So I pivoted a bunch of people, my family included. We pivoted out to Illinois. And within a year, we had 300 reps in Illinois, dominating, like absolutely dominating everybody. Vivint came in there. Anybody that you put in that state, we were recruiting. Like it was that, like we were just that dominant. It was awesome. And then one day, this is crazy, kind of like bring this all back. I'm in Utah. Keep in mind, just to back up a little bit. My wife grew up super wealthy. Her parents owned an e-commerce business for 30 years. I used to be the janitor at their e-commerce business in Salt Lake City. So I would go there and clean up and like do whatever for work while my wife now and I were dating in high school. I'm in Utah buying that company. My parents now were retiring. I'm like, I'm buying this company. So I went from being the janitor to now owning this 30-year-old business. My older brother runs it for us. It's dope. While I'm in Utah buying this company, I get a call from the CEO of Legacy, and he brings me in. I come in, he's like white in the face. And I'm like, yo, what's going on? He's like, dude, we just got word that we got kicked out of the state of Illinois. And I was like, it's fine. We'll figure it out. Like, we'll roll through a dealer. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, everything will be fine. And he's like, yeah. I'm always optimistic. Like, we'll be fine. Like, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and we're like not allowed to sell in the state. It's like that bad.
No solutions.
No solutions, dude. And finally it got to the point, like super, super turbulent, 300 people, massive pipeline. Every company you can think of is like swarming in, trying to take my people. Massive turbulent. Hats off to Brig and Jordan, my two right and left hand guys that were in the market, like holding it all together while I was in Utah trying to like solve this. At one point, I just knew there's nothing we can do here. And I go to the CEO of Legacy. I said, hey, dude, you got to put me in contact with Sunrun or with Vivint Solar.
Mm-hmm.
Like the company I'd been competing against all of these years. Wild. And he like, white in the face is like, okay. And he shoots a text message to Paul Dixon and Chance Allred, who you should definitely have on this podcast.
We're working on it,
and,
Paul. Come on.
Paul, get on this, dude. Paul Dixon texts me immediately. He's like, hey, come to the office. I was like, hey, dude, like, give me a second. Like, let's meet tomorrow. Meet up tomorrow. So I walk up the elevator, push the elevator. I'm going up to like this great and spacious building. The company I've been competing against all of these years, tail between my legs. I'm like walking through the 5th floor. You've been there. Everyone's like stopping, like looking like, oh my gosh. And like, I go and get there, and then I meet Paul Dixon and Chance Allred for the first time. And I'm like sobbing, dude. It's like, I'm just so emotionally drained.
Yeah.
I'm under attack. They know I'm dead in the water. And we kind of talk through some options. And I'm, again, like, it kind of goes back to this, dude, like these people that were placed in my life, Zal, that I'm like so grateful for. 2 of them I have to give credit to, again, was Paul Dixon and Chance. They could have gutted me, but they bet on me. They bet on me, like Dave Roman did, like Claudio did, like Chris Lee did, like all of these important people did. They said, hey, here's a kid, and we see something in him. We're going to bet on you. And so we worked out a deal all above board with Legacy. I never burned a bridge. To this day, they're some of my closest friends. So we struck a deal to go start up a Vivint Solar dealer, which was called Sutera, Sun and Earth in Portuguese, Sutera. And we went and started running our own dealer. So like, I look at this evolution, bro, in my life. And from time to time, dude, I was pulled by the hair to like, go learn, pulled by the hair, go learn here, pulled by the hair, go learn here. And I just evolved as like kind of a sales leader / business guy. And that biggest evolution to me was now becoming the CEO of what soon became Vivint Solar's largest dealer in the United States.
That's so wild.
And it was wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So you get to Sutera. So I think I actually think, this is my opinion, the most impressive part of that little section of your story is the fact that your relationships are intact at Legacy, and that you did things in a way that allowed that to happen. That's like such a difficult thing to do. And like in any industry, when you're walking away, I mean, even like petty little stuff, like when you're leaving your first job, when someone's counting on you, and does that make sense? It's
100%.
like, so I'm curious on that. How did you like navigate that to the point where it was like, I mean, I guess it was the people actually cared about you and your hands were tied in a sense.
You know, it's funny. You know how I can tell you're a really good leader and that you're really good at what you do is because you noticed how complicated that situation was and you paused to like understand that. It says a lot about you, because you're right. That was probably the most complicated, crazy moment in my life from everybody's perspective. Every player in that situation, it was very complicated with. So you got to look at the perspective from Legacy. Here's their VP, who did nothing wrong, and him and his people did nothing. I mean, they got kicked out of a state for wild things that I can explain later, but it was like crazy. The people in Illinois were trying to make us an example, right? We got kicked out of the state. I'm forced to go start a dealer with a competitor of Legacy / Sunrun, and all parties have to be okay with this for the greater good of people and humans and families. And again, there was a lot of like maturity in those meetings, and there was a lot of trust in those meetings. But it was super complicated, man. I was completely torn. I was a Sutera CEO, but my family was all Legacy. I was Legacy had to trust, and they were paying pipeline, but we were now with a competitor. We had to trust that we weren't, all of my East Coast people, remember I was a VP over all the East Coast, yet only Illinois turned into Sutera. So I was entrusted not to recruit people. It was just very complicated, but I am a believer in the long game in all of this stuff. I'm not a short-sighted person. I think there's value in being like, dude, relationships and trust and operating with like high level of patience is super important in the game of like door to door and in the game of business in general. And again, I think some of my closest allies, some of my closest friends are people in companies that I used to work at. Like they're some of my closest friends.
That's awesome. That's way crazy. That makes sense. So then you go from there. Now you're wearing multiple hats, which is also probably really, really hard emotionally.
Super hard.
How did that all end up getting sorted out to where you're at? Like, what has to? I'm curious.
So I ran. Sutera started to grow more and more. It was a lot of fun, dude. It was really scary. It was really stressful. It was really all of the emotions, man. I proud of what we had built there. And one day I'm sitting in Orem, Utah at a barbecue, and I get a text message, and it's like, Sunrun bought Vivint Solar. And I'm like, fake news, whatever. I'm like, not a big deal. I like stand up, go eat a burger, sit back down, check my phone again. I'm not exaggerating. And I had like 300 text message. It's true, blah, blah, blah. Sunrun bought Vivint Solar. And I was like, whoa, that's weird. I'm Vivint Solar's largest dealer. Sunrun bought Vivint Solar for $5 billion. It had to have meant something to us, but I didn't know what that meant. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, let the dust settle, business as usual. Like, let's put our head down and keep marching. About 4 or 5 months after that acquisition, I get a call from Paul Dixon. And he's like, hey, dude, I want you to come and meet up with me. And I was like, all right, cool. So I go and meet up with Paul and Lynn Jurich, this former CEO of Sunrun. And we're sitting in Paul's office. And Paul's like, what do you think this meeting's about? And I was like, I don't know. My contract's just about done with you guys. And I'm like, by the way, I'm not shopping. I'm like happy here. You guys are my friends. You guys are taking care of me. I'm good. And he's like, I'm like, you guys probably want to renew our agreement. And Paul's like, no. And then Lynn steps in. She's like, we want to buy you. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, we want to take you off the market. We want to buy you. And I remember like, dude, sitting in that room looking at them, and I was like, this is wild. And I was like, okay, like, let's talk through it. And then we started talking, and a few months later, we came to some terms that made sense for everybody. And they brought me into Sunrun and acquired my dealer essentially. And it's funny because, and this is like an important lesson too, like at one point, it had been like 2 or 3 weeks since I like signed the documents, like turn over my company and like be brought in. And Paul called me up one day and he's like, hey dude, like Lynn and I are wondering why you haven't like signed off on things. And I was like, well, I'm doing my due diligence. I want to make sure that everybody's good with it. And I was like, I also, Paul, like I'm a strategist. Like I know the game, like you know the game's out. Like we've been in these recruiting meetings, like we understand the game of recruiting and everything. And I was like, there's a lot of urgency from you and from Lynn from Sunrun right now. Like, help me understand. I've never leveraged myself ever. I'm not talking to anybody else. I'm here. Why the urgency? Like, I need to understand that. That will help me with the clarity that I need. And he sat me down. He's like, come to the office tomorrow. And
which is super wise of you. Like,
yeah, I was like, just help me understand it. That's it, dude. Like this is, and hopefully I'm okay to talk about this openly, but I go to Paul's office, I sit down and I was like, dude, help me understand. He's like, well, here, this is what's going on. He's like, there's chatter out there that Vivint Solar might be opening up a new solar organization to kind of go and compete against Sunrun. And your name is kind of being tossed around to go and run that.
The Vivint Energy stuff.
The Vivint Energy stuff. This was pre.
I had no idea. That's cool.
And he's like, we just don't want you to go and entertain that. We know there's a lot of really good salespeople there that can kind of pitch a big game. And we kind of talked through that. And I was like, oh, well, thank you for being open with me. Now that makes a lot of sense. Just so you know, I've never answered a call. I've never entertained that. And then after that meeting, David Bywater, the CEO of Vivint Solar, that's now Sunrun, he sat me down and he was like on his way. He's kind of exiting, right? Like the acquisition was done and settled. And he gave me some wise words of counsel that I've like internalized to this day. And essentially he's like, hey, there's a lot of like really cool things that can be promised out there, like shiny stuff. He's like, what we can promise you, we'll deliver on. And so he's like, everything that Paul has said to you, everything that Lynn has said to you, we will deliver and you'll have like a super fruitful career. So he's like, you decide what you want to do. Roll the dice here or get what you know you'll get here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's up to you. And I left that meeting and I was like, I 100% want to be here working with my friends and everything. And I signed the documents that night.
That's awesome. So I have a question for you then. In that acquisition, Bywater's a beast, by the way.
He's a beast.
I love
He's a great man.
I didn't know Bywater for a very long time, for a short amount of time, actually, when he was over at helping with the Vivint Energy stuff. I really like Bywater. Smart dude. Really, really cool dude as well. So I have a question for you. And answer as honestly and as well as you can remember as well. When you first sat down and Lynn and Paul were like, hey, we want to buy you, like, what was your checklist of in order of like, what was the most important things to go make that happen? Like when you're like, yeah, let's talk through it. The reason you want to talk through it is because there's things that it has to check off. And what was that for you? Out of total curiosity. This is way more for me than anybody else.
So it's a good question.
Sorry, guys.
No, at first, bro, I was like in shock. I was like, I don't even know what I'm worth. Like, how do you even quantify a sales organization? Like I didn't even know like where to start. And Paul kind of helped me dissect like what the value is of a company like that. So the first thing that came to my mind was, if we were to do this, like it needs to make sense for everybody, right? Like I need to make sure that from like the sales rep all the way to like my whole team, that it makes sense for everybody. So the first check mark was, does this make sense for everybody? The second check mark, as like this conversation kind of evolved a little bit, I was like, well, where's everybody going to like fit? Are we going to be our own organization? Like, what's the structure in all of this? Do I get to work with my people?
Yeah.
Or not, right? Like that to me was super, super important. And then the other thing is I had to understand like the direction of Sunrun, because being as a dealer, you can pivot really quickly. Like that's some of the beauty of being like a small dealer. And I get that, is if things get chaotic here, you can kind of pivot and do this and that, right? But I was like, I need to understand from Lynn's perspective, like what the future of Sunrun looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of just went through one by one, is like, hey, this is what we can go do for every single layer in this organization. This is how the organization is going to be structured.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the future of Sunrun.
Mm.
And when they went through every single one of those things, I just knew it was the right place for everybody. And funny enough, when I like sit back, people ask me all the time, are you happy you sold Sutera? Do you wish you would have stayed as a dealer? Not once have I ever regretted selling Sutera. And I know that sounds crazy, but every single one of my friends and my people that have joined the organization, I mean, again, Brig Barron's VP over CX Pros, Jordan Briner's the director over operations experience. He's done a great job. Like all of these important people to me have had fruitful careers where they are really impacting like a huge company. And all of the leaders have made great money. They've had great experiences. So I'm super grateful for it.
I love that. Yeah. That's so awesome. And yeah, I obviously made the decision to come and work with all you guys, and the people you work with are amazing. So that's really, really cool. Yeah. So now like that leaves you kind of where you sit, right? So I have one question to kind of like cap off the story. And then I got a list of questions I want to ask you about your story. And then just advice. I think now that everyone kind of understands what you've done, hopefully they'll go and take your advice, right? Like that's always the goal. And I think you're a good person to take advice from, or I wouldn't have you on here. So now what's the plan? Like broad view, long term, what's the game plan? Like now you run Fusion.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a channel at Sunrun. What's the plan?
Yeah, the story behind, if you don't mind, behind Fusion's interesting as well. So they brought me in. I was a vice president for like the direct to home side, but there was a huge gap in what was this evolution that was happening like in Utah business. And again, this goes back to like my Domino's days, my mission days, my like early stages. I was like, man, there's a problem that nobody's really solving, which is we're losing market share to setter closer companies. Like there's a variety, there's a huge list of these setter closers. So the direct to home side was growing, but at a lesser pace than these other companies because of setter closer. And so I started talking to Chance and Paul again, saying, hey, I think there's like a real opportunity. And another opportunity kind of had presented itself where we can go open up a new channel and have this robust setter closer / seasonal program. and really go tackle like Utah talent business. Because before that, if you wanted to go into door-to-door solar, you'd have to like move to market. It was like huge commitment. Zai, you want to go sell for us? You and your whole family's got to go move to California and like get a mortgage and like stay there. That was a hard pitch. But other companies were doing it with Utah talent running these blitzes and seasonal. And so I kind of stepped in and said, hey, I think there's an opportunity here. Let's go open up a brand new channel that focuses on setter closer, and let's go tackle Utah talent. Let's go compete against pest control and smart home and everything like that. And from that, we got Scott Bell and these big names, Christian Calabuso, James Allred, which I had mentioned before, Court Reynolds, huge name. Like we were able to start bringing these massively talented individuals, and Fusion just started to grow more and more and more. And the biggest thing that recently happened was with Rossiter, you, Nate, and Kelton. I mean, it's been crazy. Elliot as well, like massive influential people that would have never made that move had we not created a channel that supports what you guys are world class in, right?
So it's proving your theory again.
It's proven the theory, right? And it's been explosive. So what now, dude? We're in the business of growing. Like I foresee, we were at the Create, hats off to Za for running one of the sickest events in Utah. We had 350, 400 people there.
Probably about 400 people there.
And it's just the beginning of what will happen in Utah. And the cool thing, I was on a call right before this. I was on a call with all of Sunrun's people's team, which is like their HR team. They had me be a guest speaker on it. And they asked me that question, like, hey, what is the future of Fusion? And I was like, hey, the future of Fusion is we will become the largest sales channel in the United States of America. Like I don't doubt that in a second. And my proof there, and I showed them a little clip of the Create. I was like, this is year one with a small handful of leaders that have a ton of influence. Like this will become something super big. And so I foresee the world of having thousands and thousands of people out there dominating, which is awesome.
Leo, dude, your story is super, super inspiring. I love it. It's a big reason why I chose to go and kind of attach myself to you. I think I've learned, one of the most important lessons I've learned is who you're surrounded by and who you're with, and who you attach your trailer, your wagon to determines a lot. And I think you and Paul are people that I look forward to going and pull as much out of you guys as I can. So I'm super excited, and everybody else that's a part of it as well. KC, James, Scott, all the guys. So thank you so much. Part 2 is going to be me asking questions regarding your story, advice you might have for people coming into adulthood, everything like that. So everybody tune in. But as far as episode 1 with Mr. Leo, thank you for tuning in. Much love. Until next time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. As always, it was a blast for me. I hope you got something out of this. If you got something out of this video of value, share this with a friend, and please go show your love. We're on all streaming platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Any ratings, comments, likes, shares, they go a very long way, and they make it so I can keep doing these things for you, and I would appreciate it greatly. So please go share with a friend. Until next time.